Fading in and out of consciousness, Joseph would hear the leaking of moisture within the depths of the cave system. With as many echoes being present, the air within the caves seems to be getting more and more restrictive with every passing moment. Deeper and deeper, he would feel himself being dragged by whomever had saved him from the burning wreckage of the station's shuttle. He would then feel a sudden stop as the person or whatever had taken him would drop him to the floor as if they had no concept of kindness, dropping him to the floor like a worn-out tool. Then a noise could be heard. Sounding like a mechanical winding. The figure would then pick Joseph back up in a forceful way, not caring about his injuries. They would then be on the move once again, walking through a new part of the cave system. But it wouldn't sound as if they were walking on rocks and dust, but of something else, a metallic surface. Joseph would open his eyes to see a well-lit tunnel of some kind that had to have been made by something, a something that would make its presence known to poor Joseph. However, Joseph would then look to the person who saved him. They were wearing the surveyor's jackets, but they were not themselves, or they were not the surveyors they were searching for. In either case, Joseph had the feeling he was in terrible danger and would start to look for a way out as he was dragged over the smooth surface. Weakened from the crash, he could do nothing to stop his descent into whatever place this was. What is this place? Joseph had thought to himself. It didn't appear to be like anything he had seen prior, and he used to study engineering. He would then start to pound on the hand of this person. Let me go! Stop this, please! Let me go! We came to help you! Joseph would plead with his captor. The only response he would get would be a saddened expression and a, "Stop, you will not harm this unit," as if the person did not think of themselves as a person anymore. Whatever must have happened to them must have been a truly traumatic or something far worse for them to speak with this monotone voice. Perhaps the look of sadness was an echo of their lost humanity. They would soon enter a capsule before Joseph obtained a feeling of descending down, like this was an elevator of some kind. But again, not a design he had the displeasure of seeing. As soon as the capsule had gotten to their destination, Joseph had grabbed the hand of this lost soul and bit down as hard as he could. The monotoned man would groan and let go of his captive, and Joseph would run out into the corridor in an effort to lose this shadow of their former self. He would continue running, taking a couple of turns to see that the man was not giving chase. Joseph would then attempt to go back the way he came, back to the elevator, back to salvation, when a door would slide shut, preventing his retreat, and the only progression Joseph could muster would be forwards. He would continue moving while thinking to himself, "Why am I getting the feeling of being herded?" He would take a left, then a right, straight ahead. All the while the arches he would be travelling through would shut behind him, further pushing him towards whoever was lurking nearby. Inside of the station, Iando would get up with his alarm blaring, informing him that it will soon be time to start the mission. The mission to save humanity from the resource struggle. He begins by shutting off the alarm and putting his glasses on as he starts his morning ritual, washing his face with some cool, crisp water, with his mind eager for work, while putting a calm and collected mask over it. Inside of the warehouse quarters, it was anything but calm, as Daniel had been informed of the 2 missing personnel that had snuck out in the dead of the night. "What do you mean? They have disappeared," Daniel would say in a shocked way. An assistant would state to him, "They aren't anywhere to be seen, and the guards have not seen to them either, sir." Daniel would ponder to himself, holding his chin with one hand and holding his elbow with the other, thinking on what Joseph had said the previous night, when he would utter out, "They couldn't have." The assistant would then ask to clarify what he meant by that, when Daniel would tell them, "Prepare a couple of crawlers. We need to get to the base of those mountains to the west immediately." The assistant would comply and run off to the shuttle bay, taking the other surveyors with him. Iando would be walking down the corridors towards the marker chamber, seeing Hogan standing with Clifton outside of the chambers. Wow, those two seem to be getting along quite well. Almost too well. I hope they aren't plotting against me, Iando would joke to himself to lighten his mood of the day. "Ah, and here he is now, the man himself. How are you, Iando? Quite the presentation yesterday," Hogan would ask and remark. "Really? Well, thank you. And I am alright, as much as I need to be anyway. Question is, are you ready to find out the marker's secrets?" Iando would reply. "Well, let's find out," Clifton would say, eagerly awaiting access. Iando would use his keycard to lift the restriction, allowing them entry to the sacred chambers of the marker. "Alright then, let's start by going over the preparations. I want some protective equipment for everyone to use just in case something goes wrong. Clifton, are you alright with that task?" Iando asks, with Clifton replying, "Yes, sir." Iando would yell out to him as Clifton runs down to the storage room, "Don't call me sir, call me Iando." "Ho, getting personal, are we?" Hogan jokingly asks. "Well, I am their boss, but I don't really need to be reminded of all of that all the time, Hogan." Iando would reply to him, with Hogan adding, "Well, you are the boss of this operation, whether you want to be or not. But don't worry, I will help you out if needs be." Iando would let out a crack of a smile before recomposing himself. Thank you. I will be sure to adhere to your wisdom if you provide it. Let's begin hooking up the cables to the marker. We need to charge it first." "How does it all work?" Hogan would ask. "Well, as you know, the marker gives out electromagnetic energy, so I believe we need some of our own energy. It will use it and feed off of it, creating and storing renewable energy." Iando explains his theory. "Fascinating stuff. So, that's the theory. Let's see what happens when we put it into action," Hogan would say, with Iando replying, "That's the idea. However, the initial recordings are nearing completion. I have a special operation for you," Hogan would ask, intrigued by what he meant. "Special? How so?" "Take a closer look. You see those barely visible markings? I'm sure the General will want to know about those symbols and what they mean, and let's be fair, you possess the experience to tell us all about them, and their purpose," Iando would remark, with Hogan cracking a huge smile, replying, "Wow, this is getting better and better. Thank you, Iando. You will not regret this." Iando would say, "I know I won't. I have the right man for this job. Clifton will be in charge of recording the marker's activation, though, but it's a temporary position. Let me know if you require help. I'm sure he will be just as intrigued as you are." The doors suddenly slide open, with the other scientists arriving to their working stations. Clifton would shortly return with a crate of protective shades and gloves, made from non-conductive materials. However, under the dusk and rock of this planet and off to the west of the research station, Joseph would be getting tired of this constant walking, with his progress being marked by the sudden sliding doors shutting behind him, cutting him off until he walked into a new room with a bench. The room was a circular one, with nothing else but a camera. There had to be something or someone watching his plight. He would begin to back away from the room when he felt something. He would turn around to see his own reflection, which presented a grim reality. The strange door had trapped him within this room. Now it began to dawn on him that this was not an ordinary room, but it was in fact a prison cell made for a group. Above his position, however, a rescue was being organized, with the surveyors and Daniel racing to the cave's location. The crawlers would glide across the dusty and sharp barrens of uneven terrain. However, they would have not long to wait until they saw an indication of where Joseph and Gerald had disappeared to, confirming Daniel's suspicions to be a fact. With smoke rising from the burnt and destroyed shuttle, continuously racing towards the origin of smoke, Daniel would come face to face with a reality like a cold and hard slap in the face. The shuttle's rear, or what was left of it, could be seen poking out of the rock wall. At the base of the mountain, the crawlers would slowly come to a halt, blowing away the dusty environment, with a door opening on both crawlers that would extend out as a set of stairs. "This is the place. Alright, let's scope out the wreckage and see if we can find survivors. Leave no stone unturned," Daniel would command. The surveyors and assistants would comply and begin moving into the cave, into their investigations. The smell of fuel and burnt metals would be present here, but along with the odor of death, the men looked to each other, knowing that they were about to witness something that could disturb them to their core. However, for some, the not knowing was slowly eating away at them, and so they began to climb up the rocks to peek into the cockpit, only to see Gerald's body slumped over the windshield, with his skin, muscle and bones burnt to a crisp. They would ask for a body bag to be brought inside. Daniel would ask over the radio, "Joseph?" Only for denial to be issued to his question. They would tell him of Gerald's fate, explaining that the force from the crash must have been so great that he was ripped from his restraints and up and over the steering wheel, which seems to have killed him instantly, or at least they surely hope so, as no one would want to be burned alive. A few moments later, the team would tell Daniel that there was no sign of Joseph. Daniel would then begin to think that maybe the missing men heard the crash, and maybe, just maybe, they had saved his life, which he would be correct for the most part. However, he could never have imagined what was really transpiring below his feet, inside the dark, dank depths of those caves. Inside of the marker chambers, the scientists with Iando, Clifton and Hogan had finished their preparations with their experiment and were now ready to begin charging the marker, which they waste no time in doing. "All the preparations have been made, Iando," Hogan would announce, with Iando issuing, "Then, what are we waiting for? Hogan, flip the switch." Hogan would reply as he complies, "Alright then. Let's see what this marker can do." Iando would shout out to the rest of the scientists as the power starts to flow through the cables and into the marker. "Alright everyone, if you can please put your protective eye gear on now." The energy starts to flow into the marker, with the marker reacting almost instantly, with the obelisk soaking in the power the base has to offer. Lights begin to flicker throughout the base. Doors start opening and closing by themselves, until Marker 3A had taken enough power from the people, and the dark crimson monolith began to show signs of success through the symbols as they faded in and out like a heartbeat, almost hypnotic in the marker's nature, until they were fully lit in an almost blood-like color, illuminating the chambers with their light. Iando would point to the power switch, issuing Hogan to release the marker from its restraint of power. "Release the marker from the cables now," Iando would order the scientists. They had done it, but as the chaos charging the marker had slowly stopped, with the doors halting their fluctuations, and the lights merely having a dim amount of life left inside of them, as the base's power slowly begins to rise once more, the scientists would await further instructions from Iando, with Hogan and Clifton getting restless. They would look to him with Iando holding his hand up, telling them to, "Wait, hold on, you'll get into it." The computer's monitoring system would lie still until they would see movement on the frequency scanners, small indents at first, like the beginning of an earthquake, but slowly rising in size. Iando would look to the monitors, taking out a small recording device of his own and activating it. The device, when activated, began to emit a highly complicated rhythmic pattern across a wide band of frequencies, from actual sound waves through the electromagnetic spectrum to alpha, delta, and theta brainwaves. Iando would speak into the device while watching the sound waves grow in size. Hogan would place his hand on Iando's shoulder and say, "Well done. You did it, Iando. We have a live one." Clifton would begin to utter to himself with his body trembling from the excitement. "We did it. We actually did it!" The crowd of scientists begin to shake hands with Iando, congratulating him on such an achievement, with them rejoicing on the future research they could make from this monolith, this red marker. Iando would say to everyone, all right everyone, I thank you for your kind words. However, we are not out of the woods yet. There is still work to be done. So I want you all to assist Dr. Clifton and Dr. Hogan as they begin researching the capabilities and properties of the marker. You are to assist in whatever they would need of you. They will be in charge while I am gone. Gone? But we thought, Hogan would say as he trembled in excitement. I have to complete my other tasks with the General's second report. I trust you will make good use of this opportunity. You did say that you wanted to be the one to lead. Now you are one of two under my authority. I trust that you will have something to show of those glyphs or symbols, Hogan. Hogan would be eager to get started as he said, Of course, I will start right away, Iando. Thank you, Doctor. It is quite all right. Clifton, you have your assigned task. Monitor those frequencies, and if there is no change, then assist Hogan's studies of those markings. Iando would command as he headed towards the doors that were already open due to the power loss. Back at the mountain base, Daniel would order the surveyors to go down into the caves to look for Joseph and the tomb he assumed was down there as well. They would agree, but ask what he and the other team would be doing instead. The other team will be heading back to the research station inside of the crawler so that the body can be put on ice, so that when it is time to go home, his family will have a body to bury. As for me, I will stay here in case something goes wrong down there. Now, on your way. I'd rather not be here during the night, thank you. Daniel would command the teams, and the first ones would nod as they prepared to climb down into the ravine. Inside of the metallic complex, Joseph would be sitting on the metal bench, awaiting an audience with whoever held him captive. Noticing an object move with a slight twitch back and forth, Joseph had assumed it to be a camera of some sorts, which looked to be a ball with a short snout for the lens, observing his every action. Back inside of the cave system, the team had made it down into the ravine. They would activate their lights as they traveled through the dark and dank caves, hearing echoes of something dripping, which was odd, as the planet seemed to be devoid of water, or at least natural water. The workers had to build a water treatment facility adjacent to the theater lobby. Nevertheless, they headed on until coming up to a strange part of the cave. They were sure that Joseph had to have come this way, so the man in the lead of the group would place one foot forward onto the metal floor, only to hear a quiet echo which had startled the men. However, within the several spots of light of their combined use of flashlights, they could see blood drips traveling through the corridor, and so the team took a breath before slowly heading into this cold, metallic interior shell. Inside the office of Iando, the commanding scientist would be writing out his report to the general, explaining that this signal coming from the marker seems mostly inert and harmless aside from some slight interference with communication equipment. Within the chambers, Hogan had been tinkering and studying the symbols until he would believe the markers marked on the skin of this obelisk to mean something, with him whispering to himself, "The symbols, they must mean something. I need them to mean something." It would take him an hour or two before coming down to a conclusion that the symbols are a code for something. However, what that something was to be, he could not be sure, but he would keep his theories to himself. No need to add more flair to the atmosphere of the workstations. Inside of the metallic corridors, the team come up to a capsule chamber following the trail of blood. Towards the capsule, they can see that it all ends here, which makes them think of the only logical conclusion, with this being an elevator of some kind. The team of 5 would get into the capsule, and pressing one of the buttons from outside would make the floor they stand on tremor as the lift had slowly begun to descend into the depths of this unknown place. As the lift slowly went down the shaft, the men could only see what was illuminated by their flashlights. While traveling, some of them would remark on the smell of this place. It smelt of something familiar, an acrid smell like odor Dodgems would give off with their static power. With the lift coming towards their unknown destination, the crack of light would nearly blind the occupants, causing them to groan at the sudden burst. However, as the lift had issued to them their destination, that it had finished moving with a sudden jolt, the men would open their eyes, which suddenly made them jump back in fear of what they saw, seeing 2 individuals wearing the surveyor's jackets. But it was what was in between them that had them truly frightened, which looked to be a miniaturized tank, a machine of some sorts with bumps traveling up the skirt of this form, with metal plating that looked to have been bolted to the middle part of the creature, with a long stick for a feeler that looked to be a plunger from the human worlds. Next to it was a shorter arm, which gave the men the feeling of danger. It looked to be some sort of weapon. Above these appendages would look to be a vent of some kind, giving them the idea that whatever was inside of this shell must need to breathe. But perhaps the most unsettling feature of all would be the top part of the shell, with bulbs at either side and a long appendage coming out of the head of the shell, with a camera-like eye that would expand and squint at will.
You will exit the capsule and follow directions towards the holding areas.
One of the men tries to press one of the buttons for the lift. However, all they feel are several jolts to the elevator when the Dalek informs them of their doom.
The lift has been immobilized. If you cooperate, you will not be harmed. Disobey orders, and you will be eliminated. Leave the lift capsule at once.
The men look to each other in hopes one of them has a plan, but they all give the same look. They knew it. They were all trapped here, and without a plan, they had little options but to obey these robotic creatures. They would obey, at least until they had a plan to return to the station to warn everybody of these creatures. However, one of the men refused to obey. The two men would take the three to the holding cell, when the Dalek would say again,
"You will obey or be punished." I said, obey immediately.
The human would pick up the flashlight and throw it at the Dalek's dome top, with it creating an audible thud, with the two metals clashing against one another.
Exterminate!
Back inside of the marker chamber, Hogan grows even more frustrated with the symbols, trying to figure out what they are trying to tell him. The symbols. What do they mean? Clifton would walk over to him, and after a while of conversing, he would make a suggestion. You know, maybe you could think of it like a code, or an equation, for something, not just scratches that have appeared over time. Hogan would say to Clifton and to himself, perhaps. Inside of the holding cell, Joseph would get a surprise, hearing footsteps. Could it be a rescue attempt? He would be thinking to himself. But then again, it could always just be those men. The door would slide open, revealing a group of individuals being ushered inside with him before the doors would slam shut behind them once again. Inside of a control room of some kind, two Daleks begin conversing on what to do with the human prisoners.
More have come today. Perhaps these humans have allies above our compound. They will come again and attempt a rescue operation. If they do, the result will be the same as it was today. Why not exterminate the humans? No, the humans are tools to be used as such. Use them, then dispose of them. Yes, the humans are a means to an end. Once they are no longer useful, they, like all life on this planet, will be subject to the law of the Daleks. Extermination. Annihilation. Extermination. Extermination. Exterminate. 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 Identify yourself.
What does it all mean?
They will die in time. Stage 2 will begin now.
Brings about new...
You can't just do this. This is insane. It's inhumane.